Hi everyone, how are you? So let's continue from where we left. So last session we talked about, actually we tried writing a paint application with just these 10 lines of code. We tried refactoring, not refactoring, just creating our own UI framework with our own nouns and verbs and classes, and we are forming and shaping our own UI framework. For example, now the framework has this window and this canvas, and all of these are interfaces, and we can implement them with any, for example, windowing or drawing API. Now we are implementing them with OpenGL and Skia, which is on top of the OpenGL itself, and we can implement these interfaces with any library, low-level library which talks to the graphic GPU, and then we can use our framework there as well in those platforms. So I remember that our paint application, when we run it, let me run it again, we had an issue with the motion and movement of the mouse. We wanted to draw these paintings when we press and move the mouse, but we couldn't do that. So just first let's try doing that, and then we will go deeper and we will try to use this framework to draw and write an application which has a single button. So inside the window implementation, I remember we had this here. Let me just see if I find it. Yes, here. Here we are actually setting a mouse callback on the window, and then from there we just recognize the press and the release of the mouse button. But this callback is not working for the movement and the motion of the mouse. So there is another callback here, which is named set cursor position callback, which takes a window handler, and we can pass a callback X position and Y position. Okay, so this callback will be called when the mouse is moving on the surface of the window. We can prove that moving X, Y, X position, Y position. So you see that it is printing there at the bottom when I move the mouse. And so, but we don't want to call back this motion callback when the mouse is being moved on the surface. First, we want to actually press on the surface, and if the mouse is pressed, then we want to actually take the movement as the movement that we are interested in. So let me add a variable at the top here. Let's just collapse all these. Let's add a variable, private variable here, which says is pressed, which equals false at the beginning. And let's change this. No, here in the init function, when the mouse is clicked, here we say if action equals glfw press, then we say is pressed equals true, else if action equals glfw release, then is pressed equals false. Then here we want to say if is pressed, then actually use the movement, use this event of the cursor movement. But if the mouse is not clicked yet, we want to ignore all the movement. So you see that it is ignored, but if I click, and then the movements are being printed. So now we are calling back this press callback, which tells the point that the mouse has been pressed. But let's just generalize this callback as the mouse callback, not the press callback, and also send the type of the event of the mouse, if it is whether it is click, press, or release, or motion, or something like that. So here we can say, let's create an enum and say mouse event type, for example, mouse event type. And it could be a press, a release, or a motion. Then here in the callback, we want to also pass the type, mouse event type, and let's add it also here. PNT, and here we should say if is pressed, then mouse event type press, else we can say mouse event type release. And here at the cursor position callback, we want to again call the press callback and pass the UI points, X position and Y position, and the mouse event type would be motion, of course. So let's convert them to the integer because they are double, I believe. Yes. Now here we can say point and type. So let's add the point. Let's add the point when the type equals mouse event motion. So we want to actually count the points that the mouse is moving on when the mouse is pressed. So let's run it. Okay, you see nothing is being done. If I click, we have an exception here. UI mouse event type class not found. Exception in the callback here. UI mouse. Oh. It's a Java class. I think I've mistakenly created a Java class. It should be a Kotlin class, Kotlin 5. Let's rename it from here. Make it a KT. And then public. There's no need for a public. Enum class, maybe. Yes, enum class. Let's run it again. Okay, you see that when I click and when I release, nothing is happening, but when I click, we are just perfect. Okay. So this is the Paint application. Now we have written with a few lines of code, but let's try actually creating a more complex, not complex. Try writing a widget or a view or something like that, like a button on the screen, because when we want to use this framework for writing front-end applications, desktop or whatever platform. And so desktop applications are built from, for example, images, text, buttons, lists, and those sort of things. So let's imagine that we have a page, the first page that has a button, the login page, which has a title and 2 text fields and a button for logging in. But let's first try to create and write the one button. Okay, so let's get rid of these drawing lines. This callback, as you remember, will be called in each of the frames, and it will give the opportunity to us to draw our content and stuff. Now we want to draw a button. So a button is, for example, has a background, a rectangle background, and then it has a title on top of that background. So for example, we can say the draw. We don't have draw a rectangle here, we just have text and line. So let's add the rectangle, draw rectangle, and this rectangle should ask for 2 points, of course. For example, we could write it with 2 points or an anchor point and a width and a height. So let's go with the first one, UI point, which receives, for example, the top left point, for example, 100 and 100, and it asks for another point which will be the bottom right. So we ask for these 2. We are defining and shaping this framework in the moment now. So we've decided, for example, let's go with 2 points, asking for 2 points when we want to draw a rectangle. One, the top right and the bottom left points. So the X could be 300 and the Y again 200. Okay, and also a paint, of course. We don't have this function yet. Let's add it, ask it to add to the canvas, top right, bottom left, no, sorry, top left, bottom right, and the paint, top left, bottom right, yes. Also, we have to implement this in the Skia implementation, via the Skia implementation. So let's implement it here. We have to translate it to the Skia canvas. It must have something like rectangle, draw rect. Yes, it has draw rect, which asks for a rect, and a rect would be left, top, right, bottom. Yes, that is the one, left. So top left dot X, top left dot Y. That was the top. Yes. Bottom right dot right and bottom right dot bottom. And of course a paint. So let's copy and paste this here and let's make them float, because it asks for float and our numbers are integers. Dot to float, dot to float, dot float, and P. Yes, and we have a rectangle. Let's try using it. Let's run and see what will happen. Okay, we have a rectangle. This is the top left point and this is the bottom right point with this color that we've given. And then also we want to draw a text on top of the rectangle as the content of the button. For example, this button has a title, has a caption. So the text can be, for example, login button. And the anchor point. I think we should give the top left point of the text. Let's try. Okay, so our rectangle starts from the 100 and 100 and finishes here, 300 and 200 height. It has 100 height. We want to position the title and the text in the center. So we have to guess. Let's say the anchor is 100 and 100 to see what will happen. And also pass the paint, but we want to change the color of the paint in between, because the text of the color should differ from the text of the background. So for example, let's create another color like FA, for example. I don't know what that is. Let's run. And yes, we have not implemented the draw text yet. So this part is not implemented via the Skia. Okay, let's translate our UI framework command to the Skia command. Let's say canvas dot draw text line, and the text, we give text, we pass the anchor dot x and anchor dot y, and also the paint. The text is a text line. So what is a text line? It asks for a font, and also it asks for a font. Let me see, we had another text. No, we have just only two functions. So we need a font here. We have to pass a font. Let's pass null to see what happens. Okay, we have exception. We cannot pass null. Font dot, maybe a default one. I believe we had a font manager or something like that. Find this font mgr dot. Let's actually search for this one. Skia font. Okay. So we have SK Typeface. SK Typeface. I believe the Skia page in the GitHub. Let's go to the Skija GitHub. And there was some examples there for working with the library for drawing stuff. And you see the examples, or it was in the getting started maybe. Resource management, node and getters, and let's search for font, drawing text. Here it is. So we have a typeface built from, and then we ask for, we can ask for a typeface from a file, or we can ask for a typeface, a default typeface. Let's go with the default one. So let's say we want to use this face, this typeface, and then we want to create a font here off of that typeface. And that is float. Okay, and we pass the font. Let's run it again. Okay, so something is wrong here. Oh, I see what it is. So here, before drawing rectangle, we should move this line here. Before drawing rectangle, we want to change the color, and then before drawing text, we want to change it again. But if the line is not, this line is not here, sorry, then the next time in the next frame, both of the elements will have the same color, so we won't be able to see that. So let's run it. Okay, we have it. The text is here, so we have to move the text, for example, to 150, and let's make it 150 as well, trying to center the text. Okay, we have the login. Let's actually change the typeface, the font size. We can ask for a font size here. Let's say the font size, and that would be an integer maybe, or we can move the font size to the paint itself. So the UI font can have a font size, the brush, for example 10 with the default font size. And in the implementation, we have to take into account the paint dot font size to flat. Okay, now we can pass a font size here. We can say paint dot font size equals, for example, 20. Let's run it again. Okay, the text is larger. It is inside the this rectangle. It represents actually some kind of a button. It looks like that we have a button here. So let's add the title of the page at the top. So before drawing these things, let's change the color to this and say it.draw text welcome to login page, for example, and create a UI point and say 100 and 100 and pass the paint. Then we will no, this should not be at the 100. Let's pass, for example, 50 to see what happened. Okay, so we have this title at the top. We have a button which has a background, a text, a title inside it. Maybe we can click on it, but not yet. And okay, and also we need a text field which is harder than these simpler things. Or let's say when the user clicks on this login button, we move to another page that has those text fields that will ask for the username and password, just to make this things simpler at the moment. So let's just now, for now, try to recognize the mouse click within the boundaries of this button. So we have this callback here, and we don't need these points anymore. Okay, so actually we want to recognize when we want to be alerted when the mouse is clicked within the boundary of that rectangle, which is the boundary of the button. So this is the boundary of the button. It starts from 100 and 100 and it finishes here 300, 200. So we can extract these points outside and say this is the bottom top left, and this one is bottom top right. So I extracted these two points outside so that I can also use it inside this callback, because I want to say if the point that first, let's say if the type of the mouse callback, the mouse event is press or is release. So when the user releases the mouse, if the position, the point of that mouse cursor at that moment is within the boundary of the bottom top right and bottom top right, top left, and bottom right, sorry for that, bottom right. Yes, if the cursor position is within that boundary, we want to take it as a click on the button. So let's say if the point dot x is greater than, for example, greater or equal than the bottom top left dot x, and point dot y again is greater and equal than the bottom top left dot y. Also, I'm just breaking it to multiple if statements. We can concatenate them, all these conditions with and ampersand in a single if statement. I just wanted to make it more readable here. If the point dot y x is less than or equals bottom right dot x, and point dot y is less than equals bottom right dot y, then here we can take it as a click of a mouse within the boundary of the button, that button. So let's first just print it, print ln login button was clicked. So we have this print ln. Let's write the application. Okay, let's try. If I click outside, I don't want any print statements to be printed here. But if I click inside, you can see that we have these prints here in the console. And if I click here or here or here, so as you can see, we are recognizing the mouse click inside the button. Now we have an application which has a title and a button, and we can do anything here. We can do, for example, we can create another page and move to next page. Let's do that. That's fun. So let's make this one page here and say we have, this is the, for example, let's name it login or welcome page. This is the welcome page, and we need another one for login page. For example, the login page will have a title that says please enter credentials at the top, and then it will have two spaces for two text fields, we can say, for entering the username and the password. So let's say we have the background again, but the text, we want the text to be behind, to the left of this text field, the layout. So we can say it start from 10 and be here, and this would be user name, and copy and paste it once more for the password text field. So the password text field would be in, for example, another UI point, which is 100. The first one is 100, 100, 300, 200. So 100 and 300. UI point. Again, the X could be the same, of course, which is 300. But the Y will be 300 plus 1 will be 400. and this could be the password, and the y is of course plus 200, which is 350. Okay, let's first draw this login page. Okay, we have this login page. It is almost working, but the color is not right. Is somehow same with the background. So let's change it to something else. For example, 0FD. Yeah, this one is better. And copy and paste it here. Okay, this is the second page. For example, these two are our text fields, and these are the texts or labels or whatever you name it. And this is the title at the top, which is again a text. So now we have this login page, and we have another page which is welcome. Here, first we want to navigate between the pages. We want to say, for example, let's have a variable here, var, let's say is in welcome page, for example, because we have two pages. It is all right to have a boolean here, and true, it is true at the start. And we can say here, if we are in welcome page, so the welcome page pass the canvas, else draw the login page and pass the canvas. Okay, and we want to switch between the pages when the user presses on the login button. So we have it here. Instead of printing something, we want to say is in, so let's move it here to be accessible here, is in welcome page equals false. So when the user clicks or releases the mouse from the login button, so we take it as the user is not in login page anymore. So we tell the draw content callback to, from the next frame, to draw the login page content on the screen. Let's check it. Okay, this is the login page. If I click here, you can see that we go to the next page. It is funny, I think. It is very fun. This is the first time I'm doing this, and theoretically I knew that this would work, but for myself, this is the first time that I'm seeing, and I'm doing literally these things for the first time in front of the camera. I don't actually practice behind the camera. So you see that we have two pages here. We have two UI pages, and built with our own UI framework, without any other frameworks out there, like, I don't know, like JavaFX or like Android, iOS, or Flutter, React Native. This is our own UI framework built on top of very basic stuff, the OpenGL. We are talking directly to the GPU here, like those frameworks are doing, like them. They are exactly doing the same here. They have built a library, a framework, a bunch of classes like us on top of the OpenGL, which the developers talk with them, try to actually tell their intentions to the frameworks with those classes and nouns and verbs. Like ours here, we have UI canvas, UI point, UI window, and then that framework translates those commands to the underlying hardware. And I think this is great that we have it. So the next session, I think this is enough here. Next session, we will try to create, you see something is wrong here. We cannot create actually a gibberish here, a bunch of draw commands, basic draw commands to create a page. For example, then we will have 3 lines of code, 4 lines of code to recognize mouse click of each button. Maybe we have 10 buttons, or maybe we want to have animation. If we want to have animation, we have to actually make these logic more complex here. have a bunch of if statements, then move the anchor points to actually make some kind of motion and animation. And this will get harder and harder with these primary, or we can say these simple draw commands. So we have to evolve our framework and actually create better and robust widgets that we can reuse them, and we can, for example, ask them, if we say we had a button widget that we could only tell it, for example, I want you at this position with this width and height, and I want you to call me back when you are clicked. And then it would, for example, do everything. That would make things a lot easier. So from next session, we will move toward creating reusable widgets and actually steer our framework toward using and layouting and composing widgets to make the layout of the page instead of drawing and actually calling basic commands. So yeah, have fun. Thanks. Bye.